What if I told you that the little bottle or can your favorite drink comes in might be worth more to the company than the drink inside? If you're ready to look behind the label and discover how packaging turned into a billion-dollar business, hit that like button, subscribe for more hidden economics of everyday objects, and let's pull back the curtain. Disclaimer: this is for educational purposes only. You walk into a store, grab a soda in a can or a bottled water. Maybe don't give a second thought to the container. It's just the way it comes. But the container business is huge. According to a recent study, the global packaging market was valued at roughly $1.08 trillion in 2024. The segment that covers bottles, jars, cans, and containers specifically is a major piece of this figure. For example, the beverage packaging market alone is projected to grow from around $142.7 billion in 2025 to $230.2 billion by 2035, at a compound annual growth rate of nearly 5%. For example, the beverage packaging market alone is projected to grow from around $142.7 billion in 2025 to about $230.2 billion by 2035, at a compound annual growth rate of nearly 5%. That tells us packaging isn't just a support cost, it's a growth engine. When the container you hold becomes a vector for brand value, protection, shelf appeal, and even premium pricing, suddenly the drink market isn't the only game in town. So, why does packaging matter so much? First, it's functional. It protects the product, keeps it fresh, ensures transport and storage safety. But then it becomes something else. A brand statement, a premium factor. You know, the way a bottle is shaped, the texture of the can, the way it feels in your hand. All that adds perceived value. Consumers often pay more for packaging that looks premium, sustainable, or just different. And, yeah, companies know it. Packaging gives companies a chance to differentiate, to justify higher price points, and to build brand loyalty. It also touches logistics and cost. Lighter packaging lowers shipping costs, more efficient shapes reduce waste, and less breakage boosts margin. But on top of that, packaging is turning into a profit center in its own right. Companies invest in design, premium materials, and special finishes, because honestly, each incremental cent adds to the margin. And the container is something you see, hold, and experience. So let's zoom in for a moment on those bottles and cans you pick up. Many of the largest packaging firms actually specialize in beverage containers, like metal cans, glass bottles, and plastic bottles. For instance, Crown Holdings, which is a giant in metal cans, claims to manufacture 1 out of every 5 beverage cans used globally. That's pretty staggering, right? The container business here is not just in the background. It's actually central. So, the beverage packaging market estimate that we mentioned earlier shows that this format is actually quite large and, honestly, still growing. We're talking about $144 billion or more in 2023, and it's expected to hit over $200 billion by 2032. Because beverage brands compete so fiercely, the container itself really becomes part of the product story. Terms like premium bottle, eco-can, and collector edition, these are all examples of packaging-driven marketing. The result? Well, the container may cost less to fill with drink, but the entire unit ends up commanding a much higher price. Here's where it gets interesting. You've probably seen premium bottled water or energy drinks in those fancy cans. Often, the drink itself isn't really much different than the generic stuff, but, the container makes a big difference. The production cost of the liquid might actually be minimal compared to the total cost of the marketing, the filling line, packaging, shipping, and, all those retail margins. Meanwhile, packaging firms are charging big for their innovation and materials. For example, the global advanced packaging market, think smart or interactive packaging, is projected to rise from about $36.5 billion in 2024 to over $82.5 billion by 2034. When you add up material costs, design, finishing, and distribution advantages, you see how the container becomes a significant part of the value chain. In some cases, the container plus brand adds more value than the drink formula itself. Let's map the economics. If you buy a drink for, say, $3 in a bottle, you're paying for many ingredients: the drink itself, the bottle, branding, transport, retail markup, recycling cost, and so on. But packaging firms often have higher margins because their cost base is controlled and scalable. The bottle isn't consumed. It may be recycled, reused, or kept, which adds to brand prestige and reduces perceived cost. On the flip side, drink manufacturers absorb competing costs: ingredients, flavor, certification, regulation, and waste. Packaging companies are often upstream and win from economies of scale. For example, packaging materials like metal or multi-layer plastics command higher value per unit weight than many commodity drinks. The business of containers and closures is where much of the investment is going. New materials, smarter designs, sustainable formats. That means drinks companies are, indirectly paying for packaging to carry the brand and margin. Premiumization is a major driver. Brands realize that consumers will pay more if the container looks and feels premium, like sleek glass instead of plastic, metal finishes, limited edition shapes, and even collectible cans. Innovation also plays a role. Packaging that preserves flavor longer, uses fewer resources, weighs less, or tells a story. Think smart labels, augmented reality, and sustainability credentials. The Packaging Market Report indicates growth in smart packaging, advanced materials, and sustainable solutions. For bottles and cans, this means, all else equal, the container becomes a selling point, part of the price you pay. So, when a brand switches from a standard can to a premium craft bottle, the price may go up significantly, even though the drink inside is very similar. Despite the upside, packaging has its own pressures. Material costs, like aluminum, glass, and plastic resins, they fluctuate. Recycling mandates and sustainability goals, they really force brands and container makers to redesign at cost. Retailers are demanding lighter, cheaper, and more efficient packaging. The global shift to sustainability means that packaging firms must innovate to remain profitable. But hey, this also gives them pricing power for new formats. For bottles and cans that consumers see as eco or premium, the container might carry a cost premium that the brand ends up passing on to consumers. Essentially, packaging firms are capturing value not just by practicality, but by aligning with consumer trends. And, as materials become more regulated, the premium for good packaging may rise even further. So, what does this mean when you're shopping? When you pick up a drink with a fancy bottle shape or impressive can design, know that part of what you're paying for is the container itself, not just the liquid. Packaging has escalated from cost center to profit center. For drink brands, your bottle or can is a key part of your product, your branding, your margin. For container makers, you are in a booming business where the vessel matters more than the content. For consumers, you can decide if you're paying for the drink or for the experience of the container. If an energy drink could be in a plain can and cost less but isn't, the container is doing its job. If you buy premium bottled water or craft beer in a custom can, you're partly paying for the bottle and design. Understanding that gives you more awareness of value. The business of bottles and cans has quietly become a multi-billion-dollar phenomenon. While we focus on what's inside, packaging firms and branding have quietly taken the lead in value creation. The next time you open a drink, take a glance at the container. It might be more important than you ever realized. Thanks for watching. If you found this illuminating, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more deep dives into hidden economic stories of everyday objects, and drop a comment. What everyday item do you think has packaging worth more than the product itself? I'll see you in the next video.